Without further ado, my name is Ross Padfield. I am the Senior Director of Sales and Customer Success over here at Enaia. I'm super pumped to have you guys on the call with us today to go over our Q1 product releases as well as product updates. And it's going to be hosted by our fearless leader, David Young, CEO and founder of Enaia, known by many, adored by all. So, David, take us away.
Yeah, thanks. We've first of all, I think we're just now over 70 people, so it's exciting to see everybody here. I'm sure some more will trickle in, but we just want to do this probably twice a year, not too much, not too little. The main reason being that being as close to our customers is the most important thing for our business. Our customers, who are they? They're commercial real estate brokers. And so real quick, just like 2-minute highlight of just like the background of our company. If you don't know it, I was a longtime broker, both at a boutique brokerage as well as at CBRE up in New York. And, kind of wrestled a little bit with like the tools and the efficiencies. And I remember watching these, large brokerages kind of pivot a little bit of strategy to how do we become data businesses? How do we become really intelligent about what's happening across the organization. And I've just seen sort of the top-down nature of these companies trying to sort of put a circle into a square of putting products into people's hands that just don't really add a lot of value. So I wound up going to 2 different private equity organizations where, the vast majority of every deal we ever did was with brokers. And the principal of the first company I ever worked at was sort of a legend. He's sort of a CB, sort of iconic figure. Actually created the vice chairman title that's sort of now, really known within our industry. But he had gone on to become the sort of, major owner operator in New York City. And my first day on the job, he said he was a broker for 30 years. Now he's got a $10 billion fund under management. And he said, do you know why I hired you? And I thought, why don't you tell me? And he said, I hired you because this industry is built on the backs of brokers. They're the data distribution network of everything. And so, that never sort of left me. I then went to a company that, really didn't understand the value of brokers. I was hired to sort of help be the sort of like focal point for the brokerage community in New York. And it was kind of pulling teeth to make that happen for the organization. You've got to get leasing and marketing and asset management and operations and sort of all the sort of various verticals within the company to sort of come together to really be a premier owner operator that can lease up buildings very effectively, really by going to the brokerage industry who is going to bring you the deals. And so I then went to go consult with a technology company that had raised a ton of VC money, worked with some of the best product managers I've ever worked with. But that company failed because it didn't have a broker strategy. It tried to build the sort of Zillow for commercial real estate, and go figure, you got to get all that data from brokers. And so that was when I just sort of took a step back and said, look, it's all about the brokers. It's all about, you could be the biggest brokerage company in the world, and without these critical sort of tip of the spear people that are in your company, there's very little enterprise value, I would argue. And so, the idea was basically to build a product that's sort of similar to Slack's go-to-market strategy, which just build for the people that are actually the end user of the product. And for us, that's the commercial real estate brokers. And we felt like if you can really carve out a valuable sort of product there, you can continue to make brokers in the brokerage industry the center of the world. And since then we've seen it just time and time again of companies that have sort of failed because they just don't have that sort of acute sensitivity to what brokers care about. So that's all we're doing as a company. And so I'll dive in and just kind of get into this. But our mission, sort of our 10-year vision as a company, is how do we make brokers more valuable? How do we make sure that 100% of transactions have brokers on every deal? And so we're just going to kind of show what we've released recently in case you haven't seen it. Obviously, we send out product announcements, that kind of stuff, but sometimes in your busy day, it's sort of not noticed. As well as what are we building now? What's on our roadmap? What are we thinking through? And so the first thing I just want to, and then we'll end with an FAQ and just let everybody fire away. I think, Justin, they can start asking questions throughout, right?
Yeah, within the Q&A feature within Zoom.
Great. So ask any questions at any time. We'll get to all of those. But as far as what is our product strategy, how do we think about sort of everything we do? We really focus on 3 core sort of product values. Number one is, we call ourselves a CRM. It's sort of the vernacular of this industry, but oftentimes I felt like people want a CRM. What they really want is really efficient workflow optimization. That is kind of the CRM. I've sort of always said in some ways that every broker's CRM is just LinkedIn. So how do we take that information? How do we help you enrich that data? How do we sort of solve problems within the workflow? And we really do. I mean, we've got so much sort of notes and communication within our company of breaking down every single step that a broker deals with, and then trying to say, okay, not just how do we not just mirror the workflow of what you do, but how do we solve problems within that workflow at every one of those steps? The second piece, which is really one of the core values of our product, it's by far the most complex element of our product. Some people leverage it, some people use it totally by themselves, but which is fine. But is this broker collaboration? How do we enable brokers to partner the way they want to partner? I would argue the way they need to partner to feel like there's trust in the application. This is a business where products like Trello, products like, certain sort of CRM tools just don't work, because if everybody's seeing everything on the same Kanban board or in the same CRM, the incentives of the business are not working appropriately. And so we really focus on how do you partner the way you want to partner. So we'll get into some of that, especially with our Teams feature that we launched. And then the third piece is really just, if we can give you assets and save you time to look great in front of your customers, we really care about that too. So we'll review our landed reporting. We'll talk about our tenant rep financial analysis. And I'll sort of stop and point at little things where we're going to be implementing some AI into some of the efficiency to go back to the workflow optimization, because there's a lot of really cool opportunities there. So probably most importantly, I think almost 90% of our users have been able to integrate with their email client for this. The idea here is basically declutter and centralize everything you do. So in our product, if you haven't done it yet, go to your account, go to email accounts, go ahead and sync your email if you're with Microsoft Exchange, which almost all of our users are. Almost all large brokerages are. So if you're a Google user, we'll get to that in a few months. But yeah, so really what you can do here now is, this was a really complex build, but if I have a prospect or a client at Founders Fund, and the four of us are sort of going after that company, every one of our emails to the people that we have listed as these contacts will show up here. So you could see I sent an email that was maybe a sales email that said, hey, I wanted to circle back on something, received a response. All those responses are coming into one centralized location. I can go ahead and click reply, pull up an email composer, actually send an email out from here. I can come into the contacts. I can go ahead and sort of start an email, sort of centralize everything I do. And there's a couple things that some of you have asked questions about of, hey, what if I'm doing landlord rep and I have the same contact on multiple accounts? We haven't messaged this because it's probably just TMI to start, but what you should know is that we've built in detections around that. And so if that's the case, I can go ahead and, if I send an email to somebody that's on multiple accounts, I'll go ahead and get this notification here that says, and I couldn't associate an email to an account. It appears it's on multiple accounts. You can go ahead and select this, and I could say, hey, this is actually supposed to go to Whole Foods. And now that email is going to be directed there. So it's a very rare use case, but when it happens, it's obviously very important that only the right people see that information. And so that information will go to where it needs to go. Also importantly is, if you're sending emails from your cell phone, if you're sending emails from your computer, it doesn't have to be from Enaia. All that information will wind up being stored at the right prospect. So if you've got partners on LogRocket or whatever it is, the right people will be able to see what is the last touch point of this prospect. And so it's incredibly powerful. It's probably the most powerful asset for a lot of what we're going to be doing with AI, which we'll talk about pretty soon. And so hopefully that's useful. We've heard a ton of great feedback about it, but if you haven't done that yet and you're a part of that 10%, we'll go ahead and you may want to go ahead and do that. It's also great if you're just getting started, because as you add your prospects, as you guys know, we can go ahead and upload that for you and have our team do that. It's pretty awesome because it will pull up all historical emails to those prospects. So you're just up and running in the application right away. It's really powerful. And so the second thing we released not that long ago was our Teams feature. And so, this is one of those things that makes this industry so unique, which is how brokers really partner. And so sometimes brokers, partner sort of with just one person, and maybe you don't need to build out a robust team, but maybe you're on a practice group across the country with 100 different brokers in different offices, or maybe it's like 8 people that you're really closely tied into with admins. in a whole bunch of different people. You can actually create the team in the product, invite who the right people are to that team. And then every time you create a prospect or a client, you can associate it with that team. So if I wanted to go ahead and create a new prospect, I could just go ahead and select, this is supposed to be shared with my New York City tenant rep team. And I could say, Palantir or whoever it's going to be. And now very specific information will be shared to the team, but not too much. And what I mean by that is there's a news feed here, or sort of an activity feed. We can see sort of, all the new accounts that are being added to it. We've got an analytics display of leases out over time, closed deals over time, who's doing the most business development work, which is very critical for what all of you have sort of asked for, or a ton of you have asked for, is, hey, Ross is leading the charge here with the most amount of BD initiatives. We really wanted to give a lot of credit and glory to the sort of the OGs, who are the younger brokers who are doing a lot of the dirty work, a lot of the business development work. So here's the opportunity to really shine there. In addition, when you log a sales meeting and you say we booked a meeting, that will pop up here, and then teams can see what is our meetings going up or down over time. This is particularly valuable for tenant reps, but you can see this across occupier rep, you can see it across landlord rep, and really sort of break it down so that the team can be very functional. And then this is just a sort of a summary of all the deals that are out right now across the whole team that have leases or contracts out. So we also built something that you may not have noticed yet, but if people are adding deals and not putting in the right information that impacts the stats, you can go ahead and click this. And this is actually going to go ahead and enable you to say, okay, there's actually a deal that I need to update, or Ross needs to update a deal. So I can click this, which will send him an email to tell him to update CLUIP because it's missing size and commission information. Or I could go to my deal and say, okay, this is actually 45,000 feet and there's a commissional value there that needs to be updated in the stats. So we can go ahead and click save. And now that information is updated. So in addition with the team, as teams get larger, not everybody's on every deal, not everybody's on every pursuit. So what we did was we worked with one of the largest practice groups in the team that's utilizing Enaia to enable them to share information with members of the team for even the prospects that they're not on. So like, for example, I'm not on CLUIP, Ross is going after CLUIP, even though we're on the same team. But I can click this, I can actually share information with Ross and say, I saw on the Tim's list they're in the market for 10,000 feet. And that will actually ping Ross with a notification about that. So I'm not seeing all the deals here because I'm not on it. But if you're a really dynamic team of, call it somewhere between 7 and 20 people, or a large practice group where you can filter between your team and your practice group, this becomes really valuable for making sure you're sort of the biggest wolf pack, being able to divide and conquer. So, so we'll go back to this of what else is being released. The landlord leasing reporting, if you haven't used this, or sub-landlord leasing reporting as well, we'll just kind of quickly show you how this works. But our goal here is to be able to give every client institutional quality reporting, not just the ones who are paying for products themselves. But if I'm representing transactions and I represent a landlord, I can go to my deal pipeline, my landlord rep, I can filter this down to say, hey, what about 195 Broadway? Or I want to see, everything for any specific owner across all of their assets. I can filter that down too. And there's a lot of workflow built into this. If I take this, I move it to showings, it's going to say what time is that showing. I can go ahead and input that information so I can know exactly how many tours I've gone on with a certain client, what's going on across our whole company, as well as move this to proposals where we can actually run the financial analyses. And so if you haven't seen this, this is what we're building on the tenant rep side now, which I'll get into. But I can actually come in and say, okay, we received a proposal from the occupier. We can say it's 120,000 feet and that deal commences on this date. Let's change that to 01. And there's 10 months free. That base rent's going to be $40 a foot. If you're in New York City where the rent escalations take place sort of midterm, you can just add a new base rent period. And there's going to be a, let's call it a 2.5% increase in month 13, move to what the landlord costs are. There's $40 a foot in TI we're giving out. And so we now know this breaks even on this date. We could actually email our client, go ahead and send them an email to infill what the recovery should be so they can fill this information in. And now we've just, in a few seconds, generated a leasing report for our client. that's coming from our workflow. Actually, I think one of the users that's on this call connected us with their landlord because that landlord was just so impressed by the quickness of the response of giving out a report. And so that's really the goal here is just your workflow is the same product you're doing your reporting in. And if you haven't noticed some of this stuff, we've listened to a ton of feedback of existing sort of leasing reporting platforms of just what people hate about it. So especially for sub landlord rep, if you're doing anything with where you want to sort of hide who the tenant rep brokers are, you can do that. We also display all comments coming from the leasing team because a lot of the feedback we heard was, hey, I just sort of hate that the junior brokers who's doing all the updating is sort of, it's looking like we're not a united front here. And you can add as many comments as you want in the report. So if I wanted to just show the last comment, I could do that, go ahead and generate the report. And then this just takes a second, and then you've now got an institutional quality report fully white labeled to your company. There's no Enaia logo on it. There's no powered by Enaia. And this is the DNA of the asset. And so here's the industries that are coming through this asset. Here's our tours and inquiries over time. Here's the brokerages that are bringing us deals. We've got 2 leases out with those net effective rents built into the report. Company logos are on here. Here's the proposals we're trading, all the way going down to the tours we're having. And so this has been extremely well received. I highly recommend you use it if you just want to impress your clients. And so, yeah, so we'll move to sales activity logging. This was a huge request of a lot of people. And so the idea here is basically just, hey, every time you make a phone call, it's just 1 click. Every time you log an email, it's just 1 click instead of having to sort of type that information. And so now when you're in your prospects, if you log a call or whatever you wind up doing, you can just go to Occupier Rep or whatever it is, log an activity. I sent a LinkedIn message. I booked a meeting. I made a phone call. All of this stuff winds up in, really updating the analytics so that the team can have accurate KPIs, really measure what matters, and really be effective around who's doing the business development work, who's doing sort of the key work that leads to opportunities to be really efficient. And so hopefully that's been helpful as well. And then the phone number enrichment. I'm always surprised to see who's using the phone number enrichment and who's not, only because there's some things about this that make this really unique. We actually have a higher degree of cell phone grab than Zoom or Apollo or any of these products because of some technology work that we've done with existing data providers that are out there. And so when you go into the product, if I wanted to just go to a contact, or here, we'll just pull up a company. If I wanted to say, who's a company, we'll just say LogRocket. And we'll go to the contact section here. As you can see, we have this sort of suggested decision makers. You could search the entire company. But if you just said CEO, whoops, you just said CEO, we'll pull up Matt. Obviously, we can fetch email addresses, but now you can actually come in, request a phone number, and this will run in the background for about 30 seconds. So I can just sort of move forward from here. I can just click save, move forward, close it out. And then what's going to wind up happening is you'll see, hey, there's 2 phone numbers found for this person at Benchmark or whatever it is. You can just go to that contact and those phone numbers will be here. So extremely useful for especially getting mobile information, which is now more important than ever. And so hopefully that's useful. And then our product roadmap. So we just kind of ran through the things that we've recently shipped, but what are we shipping in the near future? And also what are we working on? And so, again, please fire away with the FAQs, especially about this stuff, or book a meeting with us, which we'll get to at the last slide. But one we're really excited about is sales activity goals. And so what that means is you as a broker, there's a lot of reasons we're excited about this. We did a big survey of a bunch of our users. A ton of you were a part of it. And we basically said, hey, would you kind of keep some tabs on how many phone calls you're actually making, how many emails you're actually sending? And we realized that brokers do about 30% of the canvassing and business development work they think they do. And we started that by saying, how many do you think you do in a week? And then we sort of realized, partly this is also knowing this from my life as a broker, because it's such a reactive business that, it's just very hard to know, like, how it's really hard to block off 2 hours just to make calls, right? You get a phone call from your sales manager, you get your broker needing you for something, you get a client calling you about something. And so how do you have some real discipline about this? And the idea here is you'll see a new menu item probably in a couple days that enables you to create a goal. And right now, those goals are just the number of sales outreaches or sales activities, as we call them, as well as the number of meetings booked. And so once you have set that up, we'll send you an email midweek that says, hey, you're behind or you're ahead. And then every Saturday, we'll send you an email saying, hey, congratulations, you hit your goal, or you didn't. You may want to revise the numbers, or you may want to spend more time doing BD. And as deal flow goes up, we all know prospecting goes down, which is sort of a vicious cycle of this business. And so hopefully this is helpful for just ensuring that you stay on track with the things that actually matter the most for tomorrow's money. There's also one unique element about this, which is you can choose to share these goals with anybody you want. So if you're working with a third-party trainer or coach, you can choose to share it with them. If you've got a sales manager within your company, you can choose to share it with them. If you have a senior broker, or if you just want to be competitive with one another, you can go ahead and actually send that email, which those people will get a Saturday email that says, hey, Ross crushed it this week. And, he made this many outbound activities. And so that's coming again, probably in a few days. And we're really excited about that. The other, which has probably been the most requested feature by far, is the occupier rep financial analysis capability. So we've obviously just demonstrated that for landlords, but we've already coded the financial model for this, but we've wrapped up the UI for it. But the idea here is you will now be able to, we're like going really deep in the workflow around the deal flow of tenant rep. And so you'll be able to say, okay, I toured these properties on tour number 1. I toured these properties on tour number 2. Then you can drag these toured properties into the financial analysis, which will run you through something similar to what we just showed you for landlord rep, where you can say, okay, at 195 Broadway, this was our proposal to them. Here's the landlord's proposal. There's going to be a whole cash flow analysis that gets created just on the click of a button, along with probably 7 other pages with an intense amount of analytics that you get to choose what you really want to show. And the main goal here is, partly to save you a lot of time, partly to, probably not need you to have to pay a percentage to your consulting company or whoever does this, but also just to make you look really good. We've worked with some really premier heads of real estate to get this right. We've worked with some amazing analysts to build out the model and have all the flexibility you need for this. And so our goal with this is that, you wrap up a tour, you go to your desk, and 5 minutes later, you can say, okay, here's the financial analysis of what we think we should propose with all of the deals, all the buildings we want to send proposals to. So hopefully this will be useful and valuable. There'll be a whole bunch of data and analytics that we can provide you just about your own business and about the market as a result of this stuff. The probably second most requested feature is our mobile experience. And so we are in sort of the mid-tier stage right now of not just taking our existing application and putting it on mobile, but thinking through what are the specific features to be built for mobile. So some of that would be, I'm at a building, I get geolocated that I'm at that building, I want to see the tenant roster of that building. We can actually find that information. We can actually show you, who decision makers are at those companies. And if you just want to pop in and say, hey, I'm just popping in because I'm in the building, or whatever you want to do, or just go ahead and add prospects while you're there, there's probably 10 different features to build just for the mobile experience. But all the key things, of course, will be there of creating prospects, updating deals, doing that information. And so we're keenly aware of the need for us to have not just a mobile responsive site on your phone, but an actual native application for what we're doing, especially given that you're on the go so much. The last one, I think it's the last one, there might be one more, but is what we call the canvassing carousel, which is just the ability for you to do more BD faster, for you to go to your all accounts screen, which is right here, for you to be able to say, okay, let me just go to prospects and let me filter this down to say who's got a lease coming up in 36 months. And you know what? I want to just call on companies that are in a certain submarket or whatever it is, select all, click a button that says start canvassing, and just be able to sort of click through them, make a phone call, click through, make a phone call, click through, which will then update all of your stats, and just to be more efficient, to do more with less time, to be able to save sort of where you last were. So what we talked about, which is, hey, when I'm trying to do more BD, I'm trying to sort of be more disciplined about that, but I get called into somebody's office, for you to be able to go back to your desk and actually just click continue and keep going with that process. So you can say, hey, I've got, a few hundred companies I'm trying to call this week or whatever it is, to be able to sort of really optimize for that. So actually one more feature, which is big. So this one is actually something we're working on right now, which is, as you know, we pull in news and information about all of your prospects from about 1 million different news sources. So there's an enormous amount of data that comes into the application. Some of it's useful. Some of it can be filtered to be, show me news articles or press releases or financial analyses, or not financial reporting for these companies, but how do we deliver high quality news to you in your inbox every day about really meaningful information? And the way we're doing that is we're actually about 50% of the way done with this, where we're taking an LLM, throwing all of our news through it with very, very dedicated prompts that we've associated with that to say what is relevant. So, if a chief security officer gets hired, that's not relevant. But if a new COO gets hired, if a new CEO, a new CFO, if a new head of real estate, if a company acquires a company, if a company participates in M&A, if a company sells, any sort of real estate news of what they did in another market, any of that information, so that every day you can go into your email and say, hey, here's 10 actionable emails or pieces of news that I need to send an email to my client or my prospect about, that actually makes you first to information and just ensures that you don't have to click into every one of these prospects to be able to see if there's news and information. And so that's a significant one we're working on. And then that's kind of the Kickstarter of sort of our general AI conversations of what we're doing. So because we're embedded in your email, the other sort of AI work we're already starting is to be able to run a lot of those financial analyses for you, so that when you log in and we see that you received a proposal from a tenant and you're doing your landlord rep, or you received a contract from somebody or an LOI from somebody for an acquisition or whatever it is, you can actually log into Enaia and say, hey, we ran the numbers for you. And so there's a ton of AI value, particularly around email, that is sort of enabled now that we've built that feature. And so we're really excited about that. Like I said, I know I've rambled here, and hopefully this is useful. So we'll move into the FAQ and just, hopefully there's some questions teed up, but this is kind of your chance. Obviously feel free to schedule a call with us. We're always wanting to speak with you, but we'd love to understand kind of what we can be doing better, and sort of if there's anything in particular you have, not just about the business or the product, but anything else that you think we should know about.
Well, I've been keeping an eye on the Q&A section. There's a couple to discuss that were good. One was regards to email syncing. It says they need admin permissions. What should they do?
It says they need admin permissions.
Yeah.
To get their email authenticated. So yeah, about 85, just over 85% of our users have already authenticated their email. So there's kind of a 15% that either are using Google, or their brokerage is, probably has a 1990s mentality of enterprise technology and won't allow for authentication. But what I can tell you is that if you want to connect us with your IT people, we've done this, at the vast majority of the largest brokerages. We'll connect you with our chief information and security officer, and we'll connect you with our CTO, and then we'll send over all of our SOC 2 compliance and our privacy policies and all that kind of stuff. And so it's usually a pretty quick process to do a security review. It doesn't take any time from our end. It's usually just getting that done. And so I would say if you're on Google, there's not a great answer I can give you for that, because that's going to take a couple months for us to go through the steps of getting approved by Google for Google Workspace. But if your company is on Microsoft Exchange, just either, if you can't do it because it requires admin permission and they've said no, just tell them that we're happy to have our CISO and CTO talk with them, and we can get that taken care of.
And then integrations, would Enaia ever integrate with LinkedIn?
We're actually talking with Microsoft about that now. It's a pretty coveted integration. There's layers to it. And so we're sort of evaluating what the various API integrations would be there. And, as Ross knows, we've had conversations about this. We're trying to think through, is it better to have a LinkedIn plugin where, you can just quickly send information to Enaia? Or is it better to actually just have a full-blown integration that's in our application that tells you that, hey, you're connected with so-and-so because of the existing partnerships that you have within Enaia, of somebody on your team or somebody that you're partnered with, they know somebody there. It's a big opportunity for us. We think about it a lot. We've had several conversations with Microsoft about it. I would say it's really, we've got to probably do better planning around like what we want to do there. We actually have a sort of a light integration through one of our other integrations that leverages LinkedIn data, but the obvious use case is just making sure who that knows key people at your prospects. But if you have any other ideas about that, like what you really want out of that, we'd love to chat about that.
And just about data and privacy, what does Enaia do with my data and contacts?
Yeah, I mean, we are, as our whole team knows, our first value as a business is brokers first always. I would say in a sea of companies that are pretty shady about data, we don't do anything with your data. Our terms and conditions are very explicit about it. I always joke that we sell your data to furniture vendors, but no, we definitely do not do anything with your data. We, our mission is building a significant enterprise platform as a company, and so everything we do is about the brokerage industry. The only thing we say we do with data is improve our product, and that's all we do, is just make sure we understand sort of how are users using the application, what are they clicking on, what are they, are there bugs that need to be fixed, that kind of stuff. But there's certainly no selling of data. As far as we're concerned, it's your data, and so hopefully that answers the question, but chime in if it doesn't.
And when will the occupier financial analysis be released, and integrations with DocuSign or ZoomInfo?
The integrations with DocuSign, to be fair, we haven't even really thought about too much, because it was a pretty big lift to even get to where we're at with it, which I would say probably we're 18 to 24 months away from that, and to it being like really live and shipped and tested. And the financial model is the biggest piece of it, which is already hard coded into the application. The UI is basically done. There's some work we're doing with some designers around like how the report should look, but it's really, we're at a point now where it's pretty much hard coding UI. And so, there's still some work to do on it for sure, but we've been working on it for a few months already. So I'd say 2 months to be safe is when that'll be ready.
One just came in. What are the subscription levels, pricing, and contractual time commitments?
Pretty simple. $79 a month. There's no contractual time commitment whatsoever. You could use it for 1 month. There's a 10-day trial, so anybody can go ahead and get started today. It's a self-service product, although we'll follow up with you about scheduling a demo just to make sure you get the most out of it. And then $79 a month. There's a 18% discount for annual, but it's not required. So actually, we've about 50% of our users are annual, 50% are month to month, which is a pretty high ratio of annual. So, and a lot of those users have started with monthly and then just said, okay, I'll switch to annual. So you can do that. You can do that as well. Cool.
Well, that pretty much answers all the questions. I'll just chime in with one last thing. I think the biggest compliment anyone can give us is a referral. So if anyone has anyone they think that would get a lot of value out of Enaia, please send it our way. We take that very seriously and really appreciate every single one you can send our way.
Yeah, and one last question I would want to ask before we cut this is, for the next call, we sort of erred on the side of caution with not having anybody sort of see who else is on it, but we sometimes wonder, would you guys like to interact with one another? Would there be sort of good conversation if the next one we said, hey, let's just make this a sort of maybe more chaotic Zoom call, but send us an email. Let us know that. I'd love to know the answer to that. We were debating sort of how this should go, but we wanted to just make sure it's focused on, our users and making sure that they feel like, hey, I just want to get the quick information. And so, yeah, let us know the answer to that. I would appreciate that. All
Sweet.
right.
Well,
Well,
that's
hope
it.
you have a great rest of the week. We appreciate you as always. And, again, feel free to email us at hello@enaia.co, or, Ross's email and my email, and shoot us a text, shoot us a call, and we're happy to hop on and schedule some more time with you. So we appreciate you joining. And like I said, we'll do this probably twice a year, not too much, not too little. We'll do it particularly as we have large updates, but we appreciate everybody who's a user. We appreciate everybody who joined and spent some time with us here. So we'll be in touch. Thanks.